We're 50 years on from his win, and each year here at Ascot, to mark Kipco's sponsorship of the King George VI and Queen Elizabeth Stakes, the winner of a vintage renewal of the race is commemorated. And to honour his illustrious achievements and victory in the race 50 years ago, Brigadier Gerard becomes the latest recipient of the Kipco Diamonds and Pearls Award. Trained by Major Dick Hearn for owner-breeder John Hislop, the Brigadier won 17 of his 18 races during his career, and they included victories in the 2,000 Guineas, the St James's Palace Stakes, the Sussex Stakes, the Goodwood Mile, and the Queen Elizabeth II Stakes. The son of Queen Cesar was also a winner of the Champion Stakes when stepping up in distance to 10 furlongs. Later referred to as the British horse of the century, Brigadier Gerard was the odds-on favourite for the 1972 King George, and in a thrilling renewal, 5 out of the 9 runners that year were classic winners. The Brigadier was partnered by his regular jockey Joe Mercer and went on to win by 1.5 lengths after a steward's inquiry, having rallied with Parnell in the final 2 furlongs. We're delighted to welcome along to Ascot David Redford, the racing manager for Qatar Racing, to present on behalf of Brigadier Gerard his honour in this race, the Diamonds and Pearls, and to collect on behalf of Brigadier Gerard. Would you please welcome to the podium Joe Mercer's daughter Sarah, his granddaughter Joanna, and Brigadier Gerard's groom, that's Lawrence Williamson.
During a golden era for flat racing in the 1970s, the exploits of Brigadier Gerard, the Brigadier, ensured that the colt, trained by Major Dick Hearn for owner and breeder John Hislop and his wife Jean, and ridden by Joe Mercer in the purple and red spotted Hislop silks, commanded an army of admirers. In a career spanning 3 seasons, 1970, 71 and 72, the son of Queen Cesar and a winless mare was successful in 17 out of 18 starts over a wide variety of distances. All those victories included a memorable staging of the now Kipco-sponsored High Summer, often career-defining championship race, the King George VI and Queen Elizabeth Stakes at Ascot in 1972. 50 years on, Brigadier Gerard is the latest recipient of the Kipco Diamonds and Pearls Award, given to commemorate vintage renewals of the race, a high point of flat racing's Kipco British Champion Series. In that year, the Brigadier was up against 4 classic winners in the all-aged encounter and tested for the first time over 1.5 miles, and he was made to dig deep to make it 15 successes on the trot by the Irish St Leger winner Parnell.
The Brigadier has taken it up as they hit the furlong pole. It's Brigadier Gerard from Parnell that comes to oppose him from a mile off the near side, but it's Brigadier Gerard from Parnell as they race up towards the line. Brigadier Gerard to make it 15 out of 15. Parnell is second and Riverman is third, and at the line Brigadier Gerard the winner. Parnell is second.
And the result was only confirmed after a lengthy and tense steward's inquiry into interference. Brigadier Gerard had been named after a rather self-important comedic military character created like Sherlock Holmes in stories by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. But in contrast to his namesake, when the horse retired to stud just 3 races after the King George, one of them his sole defeat at York, so ended a seriously brilliant, a legendary career, considered amongst the most genuinely important of the 20th century, and indeed all time, never to be forgotten.
Well, fabulous memories of a great horse. I remember him, but this man very definitely remembers him better than most, because Laurie Williamson, you had the privilege of looking after this wonderful horse, and here you're holding what you've been presented here, the sort of memories of what he achieved. He was different, wasn't he? He was so good.
That's right, yes. He won over a wide range of distances. He acted on the worst of the ground and the best of the ground, and he won 17 of 18 races. I don't think I can find a modern day champion that can match him on what he achieved on the racecourse.
Oh, that's quite brave. That's a punchy stat, because obviously here this winners' enclosure saw the great Frankel. So what do you?
Well, that includes Frankel.
Yeah.
That includes. I mean, what I'd ask you to do is just consider just for a moment. I mean, Frankel, he retired as a 4-year-old, unbeaten in 14 races. Imagine if he'd have come here to run in the King George, step up to 12 furlongs for the first and only time in his career, and put his 14-race unbeaten record on the line. Imagine how momentous that would have been. I mean, the newspapers would have been looking for new superlatives, and new camera crews and horse racing fans would have been out in force. But unfortunately, Frankel never came here to run in the King George, never stepped up to 12 furlongs, and never put his 14-race unbeaten record on the line. However, 50 years ago, Brigadier Gerard, also a 4-year-old, just like Frankel, also unbeaten in 14 races, just like Frankel, did come here to run the King George, did step up to 12 furlongs for the first and only time in his career, and did put his 14-race unbeaten record on the line.
When did people realise that he was special? I mean, you worked around the horse every day.
Obviously, he was one of the best. He was the best horse in the yard, and then when he retired, obviously we realised, the major called him a champion of champions. But of course, you expect, when you've got Millreef and Dahlia and Ali France and Rheingold and those sorts of horses around at the time, you think that they're going to be a regular occurrence. But that never happened. So over the years, I've discovered exactly how good Brigadier Gerard was. Okay, now I'm going to bring in Bruff Scott, because he will remember, Bruff, now he's just made a punchy claim, Bruff, that this is, and I said, well, the best horse ever, and I said, well, what about Frankel? I didn't say the best horse ever. I said no modern day champion, not modern day post-war champion can match what Brigadier Gerard achieved on the racecourse.
Bruff?
Well, particularly as a 4-year-old. As a 4-year-old, having been unbeaten up to when he won this, it was his 5th race of the year.
In 9 weeks. It was his
fifth race of the year. And by the way, Laurie won the Best Turned Out Horse Award.
I did.
And do you know what he got?
I've had to wait this
long. A guinea for the lad. Do you know how much the guy gets?
That was 1 shilling and 1p, wasn't it, or something?
Right, that's right.
£1 and 1 shilling.
Yeah.
And today, at least there is a bit of inflation, the winning groom gets £200.
Yes.
Never mind, that's good. No, it's great that that's gone that way.
Yeah.
I mean, then when I was in stables, you didn't even speak to the owner without permission. So that's what subservience was like.
Yeah, but you had the privilege of looking after this horse. I mean, from you remember covering them and talking about this horse, and just how good did you think he was at the time?
Oh, I don't think there's ever been a better horse over a mile, or a mile and a quarter probably. I mean, he broke the track record of the Prince of Wales, and when he got beaten by Roberto, he beat the track record there too by a second. Roberto had some sort of supercharge in him that day. He was amazing, absolutely astonishing. But no, it was a wonderful one. It was a most beautiful horse too, the most magnificent. It was the beau ideal. What a big, fine, handsome horse. I was very, very lucky. First year really of really doing television, and I had these 2 images of this great, big, handsome horse, which is the year before, the 3-year-old, Brigadier Gerard, and the little horse, Millreef. It was the most beautiful action I've ever seen. They were 2 quite freakishly good horses, and I've never seen better since. I've seen as good, Dancing Brave and Frankel as good. I don't think I've seen better.
And that's what made it so. And I just mentioned before we started this into Laurie that I remember watching the race at York, because I remember stopping off, coming back from a holiday to watch the first. Now, that I know you did almost say that this sort of pains you, that particular day.
Well, I still don't know what happened that day. Something happened to Roberto between the Irish Derby and what was then the Benson Hedges Gold Cup. I mean, even his trainer said that he ran like a horse he'd never run before or since. He ran as if possessed. There was all sorts of comments that he made to say that he didn't recognise the horse that won that day. And Joe, I don't know if you've seen the clip, he came in after the race and he smashed his whip down, because Joe always believed that he just gave him too much rope in the home straight. But I don't believe that at all. I just think that Roberto was a great horse that day, and I don't know what happened to him.
But, I mean, presumably
Laurie's book, which everyone should get, his book on Brigadier, even reproduces a wicked rumour that Brigadier Baitza had a sting in his whip. But actually, I think that day, the horse, everything went right for him. He was a good horse, not a great one, and he got the perfect thing, which was the untested lead at the perfect rhythm. And he hit a perfect stride on perfect ground. Everything went for him, because he was never going to do it again. But he was never been ridden like that before. And we all laughed at Baitza, who was only in the morning. He was led like a pony all the way down to the 5 furlong and all the way back. And we laughed at him, and we shouldn't have laughed. He'd been 5 times champion jockey in America and won the Kentucky Derby.
So he was no mug, but for you, what a privilege, though, that the horse is still being remembered with great affection 50 years on, and all that hard work that you've done, even though it may pain you and you still rue that day. It's a bit, you know, that he got beat, but he still left his mark on the sport, and you were at the heart of it.
Well, I think, obviously, I believe he was one of the greatest racehorses of my time. And I wanted
at any time. Your time, at any time.
Well, I don't know from pre-war. I don't know, what racehorses did then.
Horse of the century.
But I do believe he was a truly great racehorse, and that's about as far as I can go, really.
Well, it's great that we have a chance to remember what he achieved 50 years ago. 17 out of 18. He was a sensational horse, and he's one of the horses that I remember from my teenage years. Sorry, Bruff, you don't look at me quite like that. And Laurie, don't.
More of a slight to Bruff, I think.
We were so young. But that was important, that there was that rivalry, and here we have a chance to remember you and the Mercer family able to celebrate this great. Laurie, enjoy your day today. Bruff, thank you once again for sharing your memories of one of the greatest horses of all time, Brigadier Gerard.